Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the American Society of Landscape Architects Ask Me Anything events put on by the Emerging Professionals Committee. My name is Daniel Martin. I am the chair of the Emerging Professionals Committee, and I will be your host today. We are very excited to have you. I want to remind you to use the comment section on this Facebook Live post to ask your questions all throughout the event, and we will get to as many of your questions as we can. So feel free to ask as many as you'd like. We are excited today to have a very special guest, Mr. Daniel Tall of DHM Design in Denver, Colorado. Daniel is known very well around the country, and I guess I would say around the world, as being one of the premier 3D graphic specialists in landscape architecture. He is kind of the Lord of SketchUp, as we know it. So Daniel, we are very, very happy to have you. I'm going to turn it over to you just to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your background and what led you to this point in your career, and then we will get into some questions after that. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Daniel. I really appreciate it for being out here. My name is Daniel Tall. I'm a landscape architect practicing in Denver, Colorado. Been practicing for just about 20 years and worn a lot of different kinds of hats over the years in terms of what I've done. I'm currently working for a company called DHM Design. It's become a really good home where I lead a 3D visualization team and also a technology team. So we're exploring different technologies. I just recently got my Remote 107 drone pilot's license, where we fly drones for sites, for scanning and aerial imagery. We dabble in VR, AR, and of course the 3D side of everything, which really gets us integrated also into the design side of stuff. So we always have that input. So I'm having a lot of fun. It's a really good firm, and I'm thankful to be here.
You have piqued my inner tech nerd. I am very excited to hear some about this technology stuff. Cool stuff that's going on and making landscape architecture taken into interesting places with some of the drone stuff and the 3D mapping. And so looking forward to hearing some about that later. Let's go ahead now and get into those regular viewers out there know we've got our standard 6 questions that we start every one of these events with. So Daniel, we're going to run you through these and kind of get your take on them, and then we're going to compare you and judge you against every. No, I'm kidding. We're not going to do that.
You can.
All right.
Be on the bottom.
So let's start with our first question. This is the time travel question. If you could go back in time and tell your younger landscape architect self any one thing, or it could be more than one thing, but what would you like to tell yourself? What did you wish you knew then that you know now?
I should have done a lot more partying. No, I'm just kidding. I would say the biggest thing, and anybody that went to school with me would agree to this, is I needed to relax. Take a step back, not take things so seriously. Find an even keel when you're approaching the kind of pressure that comes with being a design consultant. There's always something that has to get done, and part of what we love about landscape architecture, at least for myself, is the diversity of it, which is one of the questions I can get to as to why. But really, I would look back and be like, take a deep breath, assess everything you're doing, don't panic. You can get through everything. You learn time management skills. You learn a lot of different approaches into managing and it comes with experience. And that's easy to say to somebody if I was to go back to my 20 years ago and tell myself that. The other thing that, that I've lived by, but I wonder if I would change a little bit, is maybe finding a focus a little bit earlier on in terms of the type of work that I wanted to do and really explore that more fully. The 3D reality kind of fell into my lap, and I just kind of ran with it and loved it. but finding a more focus. And I did eventually find a focus in terms of like doing urban design work, which I still really enjoy, and planning. But relax, you'll get there, and then just look for, start looking at what you really want to do in the profession, because it's really big and there's so much you can do. And there's, if you feel like you're stuck or pigeonholed, or, there's ways around that, and just exploring, and take your time. You have to be in this profession for the long haul for it to pay off.
Relax. That's something I think
Relax.
Everybody can take that advice.
Deep breaths.
Little guided meditation, yoga.
Relax. Yep, yeah, guided meditation. Tai Chi.
Yeah, there you go. All right, let's move to question number 2. And I think maybe, well, I don't know. I'll be curious what your answer is here. Who or what has had the biggest impact on your career?
I love that question. Going back to school. One of my professors at school, Merlin Paulson, Brad Getz, Jeff Lakey, they put us through the ringer. It was great. I look back at it and I still use everything, or a lot of the things that I learned at Colorado State University. It was really powerful in terms of just, the different levels of thought that we got exposed to by the three of them. Jeff Lakey and I still collaborate. I haven't talked to him in a while, but he practices now, and it's, just having that continued interaction. I'd also say I've worked at a lot of different offices, and the people that mentored me through the profession, that, Jana McKenzie, who I worked under for years under EDA, had a huge influence in the way I practice. I remember one time I was designing in CAD. This is before doing really 3D, or there was a lot of 3D, and she would literally come by with a ruler and slap my hand and be like, "You have to draw that out. You have to hand draw it." And she was right, because I still believe in that, and it's something that DHM practices. Dennis Ruba at Studio Insight. Me and him still talk about the interview that I did with him to get the job. I interviewed with him for about 5.5 hours, and we just had fun. And it was probably some of the most fun or best work I've done in my career. And the guy's just extremely knowledgeable, highly skilled, great designer. Jim Leggett, who I worked with at R&L, still friends, probably the best presenter / graphic entertainer I've ever met. Can't keep up with the guy. Really very powerful personality, but one where you learn a lot by just watching. From like the various offices, all the people that I've met, I have a lot of respect for a lot of people in Design Workshop in Denver. They've influenced the way that I've thought. Adam Meekus, for example, but even a lot of people in Denver. So it's been this kind of, for me, I really get inspired by the people that I've worked under and the people that I've met in the profession, in terms of constantly pushing knowledge. We were talking about Brian Nicholson before we started the interview, someone I went to school with who's works for Vectorworks right now. And I mean, his passion for environmental causes and LEED, was always something that, for me, again, I learned a lot from, because I came to this profession with knowing nothing about construction. I still can't keep an indoor plant alive to save my life. But it comes down to a lot of the people that I've met, especially the people that I've worked for, and my professors, just to round that out, they really had a pretty positive, at times negative influence on my reality. But again, that's where the relaxed part comes in. Not taking things personally in your career, which can be really hard to do, especially for someone like myself who's just sometimes had thinner skin than I'd liked. And last, I'd say it's the people at SketchUp. I'd use a lot of different programs, but they've become friends over the years, and kind of mentored me in my own way in the technology world. It's led me to develop my own apps and software for what I do daily in here for my job, and to consult on different software. And it led me down the road of writing papers on BIM for some companies. And that was because of their influence, their mentorship. So I've just been fortunate to be exposed to a lot of different people and places, and that's been I really appreciate it to this day, that's for sure.
Everybody that you meet, you try to draw something out of them to better yourself and make yourself more successful at what you're doing.
Should add one person to that, and I definitely need to give him a shout out, is John Altschild at THK, who's probably one of the early drone pioneers within the landscape architecture industry, who's flying under the radar at THK right now. I get a lot of technology ideas from him. He's just out there, forward thinking, and a good friend too, and a huge nerd like me, so we have a lot of fun.
That's great. All right. So all of this that's helped you develop your career, what is the best thing you think about being a landscape architect? What do you like the most about your career?
I have gotten to do things and be places and meet people that I never thought I'd ever meet. It's been an honor, if not really humbling. For example, we were talking about, I gave a presentation at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics this past year to scientists studying everything from how to find planets, gravitational lensing, and I'm a huge astronomy nerd. I've been ever since I was little. Quasars, galaxies, you name it. And I got to present to them how to use 3D modeling for 3D printing, or for terrestrial landscapes like the moon, or they were looking at some of the craters on the moon, or some of the asteroids like Eros, or planets, or whatever other things we were looking at. There's a lot to it, and actually finding this commonality between landscape architecture and I guess with space ecology, or there's a specific name for it. So that's one example. It's the sheer diversity of the experience that I've had working in urban design, doing ecology, presenting all over the world. Best place had been Japan. And it was through landscape. I owe it all to landscape architecture. It's you can talk the technology side, but my background is a landscape architect. And I always make sure to tell people that, even if I have to explain what it is, which is not a problem for me. And having that background and the diversity of projects themselves have been great. National parks to, urban streetscapes, all the way to like recycling facilities. Just across the board, it opens a lot of doors. It's not a profession that has a very narrow definition to it. It's a pretty broad profession. Going to the ASLA National Convention, if you just walk around and start introducing yourself, which you should do, and meet, you'll be like shocked at the type of work people are doing. And the fact that you can move around the profession and try different aspects and tastes of it. And especially once the expectation is for you to go and do outreach and do presentations and write papers, that'll afford you the opportunity to not just network, but visit places. And I like to go visit places and kind of check them out as best possible if I'm not exhausted. But so it's been a fun ride in terms of landscape architecture, affording a lot of opportunity to just be different places, do different types of projects. It's not boring. It's not boring.
Touched on this earlier, and also on that, remind me to go back to you on the Harvard astrophysics thing, and let's create a landscape architecture version of the Big Bang Theory.
That'd be great.
You can be our Sheldon Cooper.
Oh, God. Funny.
You touched on this earlier, but let's dive deeper into it. The ongoing battle, hand drawing or computer graphics?
It's both. There's no unified theory. There's no one or the other. Everything has its place. Hand drawing is a very embedded skill that's still widely used in our profession, as it should be. I mean, there's actually discussions in here. I have my partner in crime here, Justin Clark, another inspiring person who works with me. We see a lot of stuff done in hand drawing, and we're like, well, should that be 3D modeled, or should it be hand drawn? And what's that conversation there? Honestly, I can tell you I can do a 3D model of a location And if you give that same location and design and have a hand drawing, you're going to have a much more emotive experience out of the hand drawing versus what I think the digital graphic is. There's people who are really highly talented in renderings, like Alex Hogreff, if you haven't heard of him. This guy's amazing. Definitely worth Googling in terms of visual artist and 3D modeling, who just, you look at an image, it's just a single image and you feel it, you get a sense of the place. I create personally much more technical looking graphics, a little bit less on the emotive. That's the challenging part of the artistic crossover. But hand-drawn renderings done correctly really get that point across. But also going back to the notion of design, should be use hand drawing when you're doing your designs, in plan, even your sketching. There's a connection that you can make between hand to brain when you're hand drawing that you can't easily accomplish or do when you're on a computer. I'll give you a great example of what that works. If I teach a SketchUp class for 6 hours, after 6 hours, people's brains are melting out. They all want to go. We've all had enough. If you teach hand drawing for that amount of time, you're making a right to left brain and right brain shift. You're awake, you're energized, you're inspired by the way the design process works. It's just a different experience in terms of how they work. So they both have their place. And if you're in school or if you're an emerging professional, you still need to use marker, use pencil, use pen, thick Sharpies, really great to hash out your designs. There's a place for the 3D modeling in it, but hand drawing is in my perspective, is required for what we do.
What about on the client side? Do you think that the clients today are more interested in photorealistic renderings than hand drawings, or not? And where do you see VR coming into that kind of stuff?
Someone just asked me on LinkedIn about VR, virtual reality, AR, augmented reality. So that's a good question. What do clients like? Clients love to see things in 3D. For a proposal down in Florida, we modeled the downtown, and when we were at the interview, they all told us, like, we're really honored that you actually took the time to do this, to model our town, get to know it. We didn't win the project, but we actually got hired by another consultant that was there to help with the project at the request of the city. So it worked in terms of creating that synergy for us to have a model. Doing live model presentations of designs is something that's becoming a pretty common thing for us internally at DHM, and it's extremely effective. So in terms of 3D modeling and then client side, it's really powerful because you're showing multiple views. You're using it as primarily a design assessment tool. You're getting the context. We build large models. We build very large models. We build up all the context as much as we can, and then take people through there. Now, when it comes to virtual reality, it's a great question. So virtual reality is being used in the profession. There's definitely people that are actively using it for a variety of reasons. The biggest challenge with virtual reality is kind of personal space. Like, are you going to go up to the mayor of a town and a city council and ask them to put on these glasses? And that might or might not make him nauseous. So there's some limitations there in terms of what you actually want to do with VR and how that's approached. But it's still worth it. It's really an easy access point of entry. The goggles are cheap, if not coming with your phone at this point. You just take an image, you can use an app, and you can create a VR walkthrough. Personally, VR is extremely effective in terms of design assessment and placing you in the space to feel it. That's my experience with it. It's not necessarily true for everybody, but that's been effective. Now, augmented reality, AR, is where I've used the Microsoft HoloLens. It's an effective design tool. These are really effective design tools in terms of being able to spatially understand what you're doing and make changes based off that. And there is an effective way to present those to clients, and some clients do like it. We don't actively use it in here. The next technology is holograms, and we'll see how far that goes, but I know last year a company was able to produce a 1 centimeter size hologram floating above a device. So think like, futuristic Star Wars, Star Trek, all of that. That's because you'll be able to project it without the need of any particular special goggles or lenses and interact with it. And that's a version of augmented reality. And I think augmented reality in that level it's still years away, but has the potential to be extremely effective. So, and I can keep going. This is a deep conversation in terms of what's out there. There's so much out there at this point. You can't cover it all in a single conversation. There's a couple of different ways to answer that. One is you need to be really persistent and patient in this profession. You're going to have tough days. You're going to be in places where projects you don't want to work and you don't like. And especially if you're really ambitious and you want to get up there and design really quickly and be a principal, be a design principal, just be patient. Be patient, be persistent. Listen to what other people are telling you that are above you. There's always something to learn from somebody, no matter what it is. From a more technical, practical side, the basics. You need to know how to do construction documentation. You need to learn construction administration and how to go out there, even if you don't do that full time. Learning CDs is a big deal because it influences everything else that you're going to do up front. Your cost estimating, your designs, what's practical, what's not, learning what works, what doesn't. We have some fanciful ideas, and there's people that can get away with it because the fact that they can build it, they know how to construct something that's extremely complex, and that's going to hold up and stand because maintenance is a big deal for every municipality or city or client that you're working for. Like, is this low maintenance, is this high maintenance? So understanding the performance of what you're building and how it's working. I'd say that's one of the core skills I would say you really want to get to quickly is understanding how things are built. I think it's something that a lot of people out of school miss. Some people get it. Like I remember people in my classes that had contractor backgrounds or worked in but for others it's like you don't realize how important constructability is to what you're doing and the knowledge behind constructability. I'd say behind 3D modeling, the thing I've loved doing the most, and I actually miss doing it here, is construction documents. It's really the nuts and bolts of problem solving, what you're trying to do, and to get to a solution effectively and cheaply too, because everybody wants to, save money. I'd say, in terms of other skills, you need to know Adobe really well, Adobe Suites. I wouldn't say things like 3D modeling or flying a drone are necessary skills, and they don't appeal to everybody, that's for sure. But they're good skills to at least explore and see if you do like it, especially flying a drone. I personally do not like flying a drone. I will admit that. It's the same fear I have when I get on a plane flying. It's weird. But I do have people that I'm training to fly for me or fly with me, which is, you want two people to do it anyway, though I know John would say, no, you don't have to do that. But, it's learning the core skills of what this profession does. So that's cost estimating, specs. I know people are like, no, don't say specifications, please. But learning how to do specs is big. and making sure you can accurately convey your ideas. Whatever means it takes. If you're not good at hand drawing skills, find a 2D medium to actually represent your ideas. Find a 3D medium to represent your ideas. You're in a visual profession working with visual people, and usually with clients that are not visual. So you have to appeal and have a skill set that kind of conveys to everybody what they want. And for me personally, not that I get to practice a lot through this, next idea of a skill set or trait is understanding the phenomenological spirit behind our profession. It's a kind of a deep thought. I can attribute that to Jeff Lakey. Like, we talk about the emotional landscape. For me, it's really learning about how that connects to myself, my own experience, my own belief system, that does influence the way that I practice and think about making decisions that are sometimes moral, or based off design. And the last thing I would say, last trait or trend, is keep up with the technology trends that are emerging around our profession, in particularly around artificial intelligence. So what I mean by that is cultivate the trait of curiosity. Keep up with what's going on both the design side, great books on walkabilities, for example, and creating walkable cities. Keep up with all of that. It's hard to do, especially if you don't have that natural propensity or interest, but even a recent article in Landscape Architecture magazine by Bradley Cantrell about how artificial intelligence systems or wildness is being integrated into the profession. Like, that's something you got to read that, because that's where the future of our society is kind of going, and we're not immune from it. So I think that's a lot of different traits, but know the core of landscape architecture, be curious, and then be patient and persistent, is what I would say.
All right, we've got one more, our last opening question, then we're going to jump to the audience questions, so keep those coming, everybody. So this is the Willy Wonka question. If you were given a golden ticket to visit any landscape tomorrow, where would you want to go?
I was thinking of design landscapes, but the answer that kept coming up to mind for me was Patagonia. Never been there, heard a lot about it, seen some photos. It looks heavenly. And I moved to Colorado to just backpack and hike, and I did that obsessively for a decade, if not more. And I would love to go backpack in Patagonia, just to see, the inspiration for being a landscape architect is the natural world around us, the national parks, the beauty that's there, the feeling that's there. Again, that phenomenological spirit that's part of it. But seeing that in terms of something like Patagonia, and then the other one would be New Zealand. I mean, put those side by side. And in between, I'd find a beach vacation, but that would be my golden ticket across the board. In terms of landscape architecture areas, like one place I'd like to see is Catherine Gustafson has the Rights of Man Square. I think it's in the Isle of Man. I'd love to go see it. It's just inspired me as a photo that I've used for a lot of projects over the years.
Let's follow that up with a question from the audience. We just got a comment I'll throw in there real quick. Nate says Patagonia is gorgeous.
Yeah, nice.
So yeah, sounds like he supports that as a destination. So along with those interesting landscapes, we have a question from Jacoby. He says, in regards to your astronomy passion, do you hope to one day be involved in landscape architecture on the moon/Mars? He says that's a dream of his to be the first landscape architect to design on Mars. You ever think about that?
I have thought about it. You read enough news about Elon Musk or the Chinese wanting to put a moon base. Everybody I'm a science fiction geek. I could rattle off science fiction books I would recommend to read in a heartbeat. And all of them really have to do with the trends or the progression of where, technologically speaking, optimistically speaking, we're going. So would I love to be a landscape architect on the moon or Mars. Yeah, I'd love to do that, even if it was just visualization of something that was being built or designed. Yeah, that'd be really cool. I probably doubt that's something in my cards in this particular lifetime, but I think the generation behind me definitely might have that opportunity. I don't know if I'd want to go there. Different. That'd be a long flight. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, put me on a rocket ship. Yay. That makes it even better. It's a good drone.
Which leads to the next question, and I think this one we might get into. You might want to talk on this a little bit, and maybe you have some visualization. Kevin Pfeiffer says he'd love to hear what you think are the incoming uses of drones in landscape architecture over the next 2 to 3 years, or does that seem to end at 3D mapping a site?
It's a great question. No, it does not end at 3D mapping a site at all. So current drone uses is high resolution aerials, photogrammetry to create a 3D model, video footage, hybrid rendering and video footage or still image animations from a drone. That's the basics, right? I have friends that are in the drone industry. I have one friend, the company's called Dronomy. And what it does is basically, and this is mostly for construction and architecture, but it's not something that's irrelevant for landscape architects. You can take the drone, you fly the same path every day, and it documents the construction process. And it's not just documenting it, it's giving you cut fill calculations. It is quantifying material on the site in terms of how it's being used every day. It's highlighting the changes and construction updates that are done daily. And the goal within the next couple of years, and I know they're working on this now, is to integrate that with our software. So for architects, it would be Revit. For landscape architects, it could be anything from Vectorworks to traditional CAD programs or whatever programs we're going to end up migrating to. But right now, AutoCAD's pretty much entrenched. So we're going to get a lot more intelligence about the constructability of a site and how it's being constructed using drones. So you're going to see drones kind of permeating potentially the entire life cycle of a project. You go out to a site, you take high resolution imagery that you can use for base mapping, you'll get terrain and contour data as much as up to 4 inches or 6 inches. You can even get that stamped as a survey. So there's your initial process. You're then using that data for visualization purposes through the design process. And then once you're out there and they're constructing a site, budget permitting, because anything that has to do with this kind of technology, which is BIM, Building Information Modeling, is not necessarily super cost effective for the landscape architecture industry currently, but drones do offer that possibility of intelligent site awareness through a construction phase of a project. So yeah, it's definitely got uses beyond what we're doing now. It's so cheap and easy to go out there and fly a drone. And to see the software, if you look at something like Dronomy, they're already doing that in terms of just measuring and quantifying the daily, and they're tying this into their construction and Gantt charts and schedule and everything, so they're keeping track, because you want to keep your cost, again, coming back to cost, when it comes to constructing, you want to keep your cost tight, you want to keep yourself on schedule. The minute you're off schedule, you're going to have cost overruns. So in terms of just being able to quantify everything, so you put a pallet of pavers out on the site, and the drone can tell you how many pavers are there and how many were placed that day, from taking a snapshot, yeah, that's amazing. And that's not science fiction, that's right now. So we'll see if our industry integrates it. The one challenge for landscape architects is that our budgets, especially after post-recession, have been tight. We don't have the kind of resources in terms of money and hours to throw towards some of this technology. That doesn't mean we shouldn't do it, especially as the costs come down. And having a drone operator in-house, it's also a landscape architect that can go out and fly a site during construction or doing CA, and you can start comparing stuff even if it's once a week. That's pretty powerful, I think. We'll see. but that's definitely where the technology is going. That's one level of automation, but it's also quantification. And that's not a small thing in terms of just how you're building something. Daniel can speak to that when they're putting pavers and everything on site. What's involved with that? I mean, just the staging alone, being able to quantify staging is great from the onset.
They're great for after the project's done to use drone footage as marketing and promotion
right.
of your firm to get the next job where you can then use it again.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to show of what you're doing with drones? Do you have any?
Not that I can currently show right now because they're active projects. So no, but in the future for sure. We have a Phantom 3 Pro and we have a Phantom 4 Pro. And the Phantom 4 Pro is a pretty intimidating tool. It's incredible. Like, I'm not a believer in Terminator that here come the machines and we're going to be done in with, but you could see the potential being there with some of these devices. They're just hyper smart. I mean, sometimes it breaks down or something and we complain, and I look at my coworker, I'm like, this is one complicated machine. Like, this is not some kind of simple thing. Like, it's pretty amazing what they fit into, especially the Phantom 4. The thing is just between the obstacle avoidance and all the data and metrics it can do, the fact that it can follow you around, or you can point on your iPad and it flies someplace and avoid stuff. That's pretty complicated calculations, and you could see in some of the videos it's doing a map, a 3D map. It's not too dissimilar actually from the way augmented reality works, and that's where you're really going to get a combination of stuff. Plus, just for the sake of drones, just to if you've never seen drone racing videos, I highly recommend you watch them. These people are flying drones at 60 to 120 miles an hour. It's crazy. So just thinking about that in that context. I don't know. Sorry, I got off topic on that one, but yeah, it's really hard and kind of crazy.
As far as flying the drone, Kevin responded, thanks for the answer to that. Said he recently got his Parts 107 cert.
Nice.
So talk about that. If you want to get drones involved in your practice, what do you need to do, obviously, besides just going out and buying a drone?
So you need your Remote 107 pilot's license from the FAA. There's something called is it remote101.com, I believe it is. It's a great place to study. It's a study guide. You're basically, the way that you're learning about basic piloting regulations and rules over the continental United States. And you're actually interpreting maps. So we're used to looking at land, terrain, topo maps. Now you're looking at the airspace maps and interpreting it. So yeah, that's where you need that. You need to research drone insurance, and then really understand the regulations, which is what studying for the Remote 107 really does. Like, you definitely want to go through a checklist before you fly. And again, I have to give a shout out to John Alchild from THK, because he's really the one that pushed me in this direction and helped develop it. Me and him collaborated on getting his drone reality up at his business, and me getting it up here at DHM. And with that said, you learn the regulations, where you can fly, where you can't fly, how you're supposed to fly, how to check the weather, how to check airspace so you're not anywhere near an airport. Kevin understands all this. Hey, Kevin, I just had to look up classy airspace today for something I'm flying tomorrow. And it was kind of confusing. Sometimes it's not straightforward. So you also have to research a little bit in terms of where you can fly. And you want to fly responsibly. You definitely do. That's one of my things. You can hit something, you can hurt somebody, you can cause damage. And then your company's liable, not you, and then you have to really start thinking about looking for another job. No, just kidding. So that's the basics of where you want to get started. The other thing then you have to do is learn how to fly a drone. There's the Phantom 3 Standard, which is a cheap drone, $500 or $600. It's a great place to start. Those little toy flying drones, they're not the same drone flying experience as a Phantom 3 or a Phantom series, where They can automatically, and just they have flight stabilization. They hover. They have longer battery lives, up to 20, 25 minutes. Now 27 minutes with the Phantom 4. So get some hours learning to fly a drone. See if you like it. It's definitely not for everybody. So everybody's interested in it, and it's worth seeing if it's doing it. And then once you get to that point, start learning about the various apps that are out there. There's a lot of apps. There's a lot of ways to use drones for scanning, aerial photography, or whatever else that it might be. Especially marketing videos. We've been doing those, especially showing programmatic uses, but that aside. So you do need your Remote 107. You need buy-in from your company, and your company needs to get insured. And there's also ways to have drone insurance on the fly. There's an app called Verifly, which will allow you to just buy limited liability insurance to fly a drone site. Learn the regs. Really big deal.
I actually fly a Phantom 3 myself, so.
Nice, yeah, awesome,
yeah,
fun.
It is fun. So next question: what is the most? What software is on your computer that you use the most?
Running down the list, the first one's probably Microsoft Word. I do a lot of proposal writing. I do a lot of marketing writing, but you're talking about more of the fun stuff. Photoshop, After Effects, InDesign, SketchUp, Lumion, AutoCAD, Revit, Autodesk, what is it called? Can't believe, not Make, Recap, sorry, Autodesk Recap. What else? Use a lot more Revit than I thought. Do a lot of conversions with Revit. I don't have 3ds Max on my computer, but Justin, who works with me, does, and we use that often. Various little rendering programs, a couple of screen capture and transparency programs that I can't mention or I'll get killed by my coworker. That's pretty much it, I think, for right now. There's probably other stuff on there. There's a lot of stuff on there. SpeedTree, it's another one. Learning how to use that. And every once in a while, there's just the occasional random kind of new tech that someone throws our way that we download and see what it does. We do a lot of R&D. We have a little bit of an R&D budget, so we're constantly looking at different programs, doing different things.
And outside of AutoCAD is the obvious, what software do you think every student coming out of a landscape architecture program should be familiar with?
It's a controversial one. I mean, the best way for me to answer that is to really look at the statistics of, there have been a number of surveys done, I don't know when the last one was done, probably a couple of years ago, of what the top software that's being used in firms. So that's AutoCAD, that's Photoshop, that's SketchUp, Microsoft Word, Excel. Those are the top 5 ones in terms of what you'll find dispersed in the industry right now. So I think any one of those. Photoshop, InDesign, that's pretty standard. You really do need to know how to use them. SketchUp's not for everybody, but having a rudimentary skill in SketchUp helps, even to do just a little bit of design concepts. I know a lot of people in our office constantly using it for just the smaller, design studies. And I would, at the minimum, I would learn about BIM. There's a great book called BIM for Dummies. I would highly recommend people get it. You're going to hear the term a lot. You have to make your own decision about whether what you're doing for a project is BIM worthy or how BIM works in landscape architecture. And there's other books on that as well. But I would get a book on BIM for Dummies and kind of put that in your toolkit as you come out of school, just to understand, even if you're practicing right now, but just to learn about it because you hear about it so often and just having an idea of what it means. Other thing, we do use MicroStation and Bentley products. Used to use those a lot. And they're actually pretty effective. I'll give Bentley credit. I don't think you need to know that coming out of school, but there are places that use that quite a bit.
All right. I know we're getting into about 15 minutes left here, and I know that you had some stuff that you wanted to show. So I'm gonna just kind of turn it over to you for a little bit and let you get into that. Um, and then we've got a couple more questions that we should have time to get to, and then we can go from there.
Okay.
All right.
So can you see my screen okay?
I'm gonna.
Oh, yep. There you go. This is SketchUp, but one of the things that I'm getting into right now is developing my own apps for what I do. We build fairly detailed and complicated models, and I'll show you an example of one. Let's see. Do I have this up already? Let's see. Bring it up. I like to build a lot of context in our models. We've gotten very quick at building all this regional information. You're looking at Durango, Colorado. This is a rendering we're doing for the city. Get to more eye-level stuff, but you could see here, this is actually an animation, but we build everything around it. And we do this for a lot of our projects. It doesn't matter what the scale is. To us, building context is really important. And then you can leverage all that information once you build it. Like we can create figure rounds from the 3D models. We take sections. Example, you're looking at this big blue mass, and we're trying to figure out how to reconnect downtown. And we start showing how those connections can be done. All of this is done in 3D, which becomes a very effective tool for us. But to create some of this, I went out and started working with a developer to create something called Placemaker, and this is version 1. And what it does is, in essence, and hopefully this works, as I say that's about the app itself, you have this, let's say we're looking at Phoenix, Arizona, and it's an aerial. I'm going to bring it into SketchUp. And the one thing that I need from this is I need a better resolution or better quality aerial, number one, but I would also love to have the buildings and roads for this location. So what Placemaker allows you to do is it's pulling data from something called OpenStreetMaps. OpenStreetMaps is like the Wikipedia of mapping. You see it on your phone all the time, if you look at 3D maps. And basically you could see what it did is it imported in that data from OpenStreetMaps. So I now have building massings this is downtown Phoenix. On top of it, I can also add the road network and various other things. But for the onset for what we're doing, this is where it's saving me days. Because this would take me days. This would take me a full day or two to actually construct, which would be kind of crazy. We have access or allow for access to high resolution imagery and aerials. It's importing it right now. And my goal is to find even more data sets that I can import into this and constantly build what I'm doing in this app to make my life easier in my day-to-day. It doesn't matter the project. And we're talking about, clients, what are they wowed by? They're like, well, you're showing up with their city. And that's become an effective way. Now here's a much better quality resolution aerial, which helps a great deal in terms of just what it can do there. And then again, we'll see how this works. I'm just gonna make sure these settings are off. But you can import in the road network paths. The building data isn't there for everything, unfortunately. I'm trying to work on data sets that make that stuff more available. Ironically enough, companies like Google and Apple have so much 3D data for just about every square inch of this planet. You could see it in Google Earth. You could see it on the 3D maps. But the result of that is they actually have locked down the data, so it's not readily available or accessible. Like lots of copyrights issues there. But slowly, we're noticing, and I talk to these people regularly, that they're starting to loosen up access to this data. So what that means for me is wanting to be at the forefront having someone helping me code this and develop an app that can bring in all these different data sources. Autodesk has something called InfraWorks that works similarly, though it's in much more. They haven't really updated enough. And then obviously Esri has City Engine, which is a parametric version, which lets you pull in GIS databases. And again, these are all tools that really let you off the bat. It could be a little small site in here that I'm doing, or it could be a regional model. It is dependent on the availability of the data. The road data is there. The building data is much more sporadic, but that's changing. Microsoft just donated 9 million buildings to OpenStreetMaps. And again, I'm looking at more data sources. So, and my purpose with this is there's lots of different ways to do things in landscape architecture. For me, the technology side, when it comes to coding, programming, scripting, they have a place in this profession and what we do. Again, it's a subset, but it is worth thinking that way in terms of finding efficiencies in what you do and how you work. It's a pretty big deal. And again, just to show these examples of, we're building these really large city sets and then kind of doing our studies this way. And it's a lot of fun to do because the clients really enjoy seeing this in 3D and what it can produce, and then really getting down even more into the details, starting to add another level of detail where you're getting to these kind of render quality looks. Oh, yeah, sorry. SUPlacemaker.com. There's a free trial. It's limited. The trial doesn't bring in the data, it just kind of acts like as a holographic viewer. And it does also model stuff on terrain for you. And my business partner, Dale, who's the coder, the guy's just ridiculously talented. I'm always asking him for stuff, and I was like, it's easy. And he just laughs at me. He's like, no, it's not that easy. So thank you for letting me plug that. I will turn off the share.
Here, let's hit these as we're approaching. Actually, first one about those renderings themselves. Were these renderings done with Lumion? By the way,
they were.
Okay, they were done in Lumion. Okay, there you go. All right, and then we've got a question from Sadie. She says, I work at a firm in which engineers and architects are leading every project. I could see staying here for a long time if landscape architects are able to lead projects. I'm wondering if you have any advice for someone like me who is trying to speak the language of the engineers using Civil 3D and architects using Rhino.
If your passion, I've worked for multidisciplinary firms. I worked for a firm led by architects. I've worked for a 1,000-person engineering firm that had 5 landscape architects, 8 maybe. So I've been in 2 situations where we're outnumbered. I worked for EDAW for 5 years, and EDAW was a 1,000-person landscape architectural firm across the globe. Influenced my career. I wouldn't be where it is if it wasn't for EDAW, Jana McKenzie, all the people I work with there. But more important, they ran the projects. It didn't matter. They were primes on a lot of the projects, and that really is effective. If you really want to be doing that kind of work where you're a prime, you should think about working in a different firm that's just landscape architecture. Mid-sized firm, roughly 8 to 20, if not more people, if not more, like design workshop size or something, SWA, whatever it might be. But you want to work in a firm that's not multidisciplinary, in essence. There's nothing wrong with working in a multidisciplinary firm. You'll learn a lot. You do want to learn how to speak architecture and engineering because we do have to work with them, and we do need to make sure, and a lot of them understand what we do, believe it or not, contrary. It's just whether they want to let us have the control or our way with what we're trying to do for a site. But if you want to work and do landscape architecture work where you're a prime, you need to go to a firm that is purely LA. I could tell you that from just direct experience working multiple places.
Great advice. We are Well, 5 minutes out, so let's kind of look towards wrapping up, and I'm going to give it over to you, Daniel, just to give any kind of closing comments, any further advice you have for students and emerging professionals. You can give some more information about where they can find out more about you, and get a hold of some of your SketchUp webinars, things like that, and just any other comments you might have.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If you're interested in learning SketchUp and it's free, just go to danieltall.com. I have a blog there with tons of SketchUp advice. If you sign up for the videos for free, you'll get access to the SketchUp basics there. Just if you want to learn it, you don't need to get the subscription. That goes into more advanced stuff like terrain modeling and other items, but you can check that all out. This is a good time to be a landscape architect. There's a lot going on. First and foremost, things are busy. This is in contrast to where things were roughly 7 or 8 years ago. And especially if you're a young professional, emerging professional coming out of school, there's just not enough LAs right now. There's people always hiring and looking. I know that people might be like, I'm looking for a job and it's hard to find. Just be patient with that. Consider moving. But places are firmly have pretty good backlog. It's been a while since it's been like this, and that's just my take being in Denver. It could be different in other places, but Denver's a pretty hot market here. Have fun with what you do, and then learn as much as you can of the different aspects of landscape architecture and what appeals to you. It's the best advice I can give you. And don't settle. It's a pretty wide open profession. If you don't like something, there's, a lot of people in the profession go and work with some of the trade manufacturers or representatives. There's a whole variety of different stuff. Oh, and one other thing, get involved with ASLA. Some people, you might hear whatever you want about ASLA. Some people say it doesn't give me enough, whatever. It's a good organization to support. It's a really friendly community of people. It's great to go network. We're a really small community. Everybody knows each other. So play nice as best you can. You're not always going to be perfect, but go and network with the different people in the profession. Don't just go to ASLA nationals just for CEUs, though that's a good reason if you're getting licensed. But go in and go support this profession as best you can. Even giving of your time, it's worth it. We're our best advocates, and ASLA needs our assistance to actually do that. So think about not what, what did John F. Kennedy say? Not what your country could do for you, but what you can do for your country. I know it's cheesy, but in this particular case, it's pretty relevant. I wasn't involved with ASLA for the first 10 years of my career, and then I was for the next 10, and I missed out by not doing it. And the other thing is if you are entering this profession, if you are working, you do need to get licensed. It's an important milestone. It's being recognized now across the country as being important, aside from your pay scale being influenced by it. But it's worth it. It's hard, but it's worth it. And thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for being with us, and great advice, especially the annual meeting advice, going in and networking and meeting people. Meet people like Daniel, like us, the people you look up to in the industry. They're there, and they love it when you come up and talk to them. I know that a lot of students, younger professionals, think, oh boy, I don't want to go bother that person. I don't want to go, talk to Daniel Tall or Michael Van Valkenburg or Mia Lair or whoever. They don't want their time wasted with me. But I guarantee you, everyone in this profession loves to help other people in this profession. Very friendly, would love to talk to you. So in the annual meeting, great place to network. You might meet the person to get you your next job or get you into the next thing that you want to do that you love. So highly recommend it. And the annual meeting, of course, is coming up in October in Los Angeles, which is going to be a lot of fun. Great location. I think you can still early bird register, maybe. So check out the ASLA website for more information on that. All right, Daniel, thank you so much again for joining us, for all of your knowledge. If anyone wants more information, like you said, check out danieltall.com. You can get a hold of him there. And be sure to join us next month for another exciting edition of Ask Me Anything by ASLA. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.